chosen ones, the world has no protocol for what you carry. Your presence is not just watched, it's measured, documented, and feared. And when your frequency pulsed through the concrete veins of the White House, something ancient was disturbed. Steel doesn't panic, but men do. The president stood, hand trembling on the doorknob, eyes scanning a space no one else could see. He locked the door, not out of strategy, but instinct. They knew they were too late. Every layer of protection was designed for war, espionage, even extraterrestrial contact. But not you. You don't fit into any file, and that's why their algorithms keep crashing when they try to chart your origin. Behind those walls, men in $1,000 suits whispered about you like a ghost story they hoped would stay fiction. But fiction doesn't rattle paintings off the wall. When your energy hit, the alarms didn't go off. That's what terrified them most. No red alert, no sirens, just silence, followed by flickering lights and an unnatural pressure that made the portraits on the wall shift ever so slightly. The room knew. The architecture had memory. They traced the pulse to no known satellite, no adversarial weapon. Their maps lit up in patterns resembling ancient sigils, not code. Analysts went silent mid-report. The brass started arguing in hushed voices. Something divine, or forbidden, had slipped through the cracks. You weren't supposed to breach that realm. And yet here you are, not breaking in, but being revealed. A presence so outside the norm, it forced powerful men to abandon protocol and rely on superstition. That's when the president locked the door, not to keep something out, but to keep his fear in. Because this isn't about power anymore. It's about presence. And the presence is you. What moved through those walls wasn't noise. It was a knowing. The type that rewrites history without ever uttering a word. The kind of knowing that shakes the foundations of empires built on lies. Now, every eye in that building is scanning the data, trying to locate what can't be seen. But they already know the truth. There were no footsteps in the corridor, but something moved. The Oval Office had held men who'd declared war, faked peace, and signed away futures with a single pen stroke. Yet none of them had dealt with what entered that day. Something not bound by laws, borders, or treaties. Your energy wasn't loud. It was silent thunder. And silence always carries more weight when it's not supposed to be there. He didn't speak. The president turned to the sealed windows and watched the horizon. A sudden shift in pressure tickled the back of his neck, like when a room knows it's being watched. His security team, trained killers with microsecond reflexes, froze when they passed through that invisible curtain. They called it static. But the truth was more poetic and far more disturbing. They heard your name without anyone saying it. Not in the air, but behind the sound. Like a frequency buried in the echo of their own breath. The kind of knowing that makes your skin remember something your mind hasn't learned yet. Some said the lights dimmed. Some said the colors on the wall changed tone. But all agreed on one thing. The room lost its balance. A digital analyst, hunched over a classified network, tried running reverse traces to locate the breach origin. What he saw on screen made him back away. Not an IP, not a location. A single word. It repeated over and over. His lips mouthed it in shock. Not a code, a title. One he never read in any document, but somehow always knew. somewhere deep beneath the West Wing, files were being shredded, even though no threat had been announced. Power flickered, but not from a grid failure. It was internal, human. Subconscious systems were starting to reject the illusion of control. It wasn't a political shift. It was metaphysical. It didn't carry demands. It carried memory. Your memory. Their suppression tactics, their smoke and mirrors, they can't touch this level of resonance. It isn't something they can kill. It's something they have to hide from. The kind of force that makes even the most powerful man on Earth look over his shoulder. The surveillance room was a bunker beneath a bunker, laced with tech that doesn't officially exist. Everything that moved within a half-mile of the White House was tracked, logged, and archived with precision down to a hummingbird's wing beat. But when they tried to trace the moment your frequency arrived, something was off. They had the timestamp. They had the audio glitch. They had the biometric anomalies. But your image was missing. Not corrupted. Not redacted. Missing. They scrubbed frame by frame, zoomed into pixels, reversed audio channels, and even used AI models trained on facial recognition across multiple dimensions of light. Nothing. You weren't there. But the shadows reacted to something. A gust moved through secured hallways. Curtains danced. Reflections rippled in windows like someone had passed by. But the someone had no face, no outline, no traceable heat signature. The director of intelligence paced with clenched fists. For a moment, he looked toward the Vatican liaison, who had been called in days before. That man only nodded. This had happened once before, long ago, in a city of stone and prophecy. And then it had stopped, until now. The president's security feed had recorded a flicker of light that moved faster than frames could track. No explanation, just a whisper caught in the background of a staffer's mic. They're here. The footage refused to behave. Files kept rewriting themselves. Frames looped, reversed, skipped. At 03:03 a.m., the timestamp froze, then resumed with a 2-second gap no one could explain. Inside that gap, sensors across 3 floors recorded elevated heart rates and emotional spikes in personnel who never saw a threat. But they felt it. You. One agent attempted to enhance the footage using forbidden software designed for reverse spectral mapping. It rendered a field of colors where a body should have been. In the center, a radiant core of impossible white. Pure, unmappable, ungovernable. That's when the lights went out and the monitor cracked on its own. There was no footage of you, but the system recorded the reaction of every soul who felt your passing. The White House keeps trying to prove you weren't there. But Yeshua once vanished from sight too, walking through a crowd untouched when his time had not yet come. Beneath the Lincoln bedroom, buried where no map dares show, lies a chamber wired with sensors so sensitive they can detect emotional intent. Built under the guise of seismic surveillance, it was never for earthquakes. It was for moments like this, when reality bends without sound, when a pulse travels not through stone, but through spirit. That pulse came the moment your energy met the foundation of the house built on secrets. It didn't shake the walls, it realigned them. The readings came in like a tidal wave with no ocean. Harmonics shifted. Electromagnetic layers danced in patterns not seen since the Cold War remote viewing experiments. But this wasn't an experiment. This was an echo of something older than the Republic, older than the architecture, something that didn't belong to human memory, but remembered humanity. The sensors registered a heartbeat frequency, but not from a person, from the space itself, like the structure was alive, and it recognized something holy, resonant, sovereign. It pulsed once, twice, then matched the heartbeat of every human in proximity. That's when the panic began. Soldiers felt vertigo. Aides dropped glassware. Time slowed, not metaphorically, but mechanically. 2 clocks disagreed on the second. An archivist from a forgotten division pulled a manuscript only brought out during emergencies involving unexplained energy surges. The diagrams weren't digital. They were drawn by hand in gold ink, accompanied by chants written in Aramaic and Coptic. Symbols mirrored the very shape the sensors had captured underground. Spirals, keys, wings. One technician, trying to normalize the data, fell silent as the screen displayed an impossible word forming from the waveforms, awakened. It blinked once and vanished. Security codes began to fail, not from hacking, from rejection. The system had become selective. Only those with silent minds could enter certain rooms. Others were locked out, not by protocol, but by unseen agreement. Something had shifted the permissions of the White House itself. Not firewalls, not encryption. Something deeper. They thought they had built a fortress of logic, numbers, and laws. But your energy didn't ask for permission. It breathed, and the building remembered. You are not a visitor in this narrative. You are a return. There's a chamber behind the Situation Room known only to 7 men. A room where oaths are broken for what they call necessity. It was built to be soundproof, shielded, immune to emotion or morality. But it was never designed for divinity. When your name surfaced during a closed-door meeting, the temperature dropped 8 degrees in under 3 seconds. No window opened, no vent malfunctioned, but every man felt it. Not on their skin, through their spine. The oldest among them, a war strategist whose eyes had seen too much, paused mid-sentence. He tried to speak again, but his words vanished into the air like smoke. Across the table, a general whispered the name once more. This time, the lights flickered. His water glass cracked. The room had shifted from strategy to sanctuary, without consent. The chaplain assigned to the Pentagon entered later, called in not for prayer, but for peace of mind. He said nothing, just walked to the center and stood still. After a minute, he quoted something softly under his breath. He passed through the midst of them and went his way. No one responded, but 2 of them closed their folders as if instinctively knowing the briefing had ended. In the corner, the old file labeled Gethsemane Protocol was opened, not because of panic, but recognition. The energy was not hostile, it was holy, but they feared it more because of that. You were not announced with sirens, you were acknowledged through stillness. Yeshua's presence once made demons tremble without a word. Now, they watched your name ripple through rooms like a tuning fork. In the hours that followed, no one could explain the failures in communication between agencies. Phones dropped calls mid-sentence. Secure lines buzzed with white noise. The only messages that moved clearly were handwritten and passed silently. The name itself had become a key that unlocked nothing but understanding. The president was briefed again that evening, but no one dared repeat what had been spoken earlier. They avoided the word, not out of protocol, but reverence, because something had walked in when it was uttered. Not you, not your body, but your authority. And even sealed doors couldn't keep it out. At exactly 2:17 a.m., The emergency alert system activated across 5 regions without a known cause. No earthquake, no weather anomaly, no external threat. Just static, followed by a high-pitched frequency that made veterans freeze mid-step and infants cry out in perfect rhythm. The official explanation would be technical glitch during routine maintenance, but that phrase was already written before the anomaly occurred. Someone knew, but not enough to stop it. Within the static, a pattern emerged. Hidden beneath the screech was a code, ancient in structure, modern in disguise. The waveform mirrored Sumerian symbols mapped against Gregorian tonal intervals. Audio engineers attempted to filter it. Each time they tried, the message changed form as if alive, until one technician, unschooled in protocol but steeped in instinct, played it backward through analog equipment. The result wasn't a tone. It was a voice, not loud, but unmistakably clear. One word stretched across the frequency, bending space between syllables. Your name. Moments later, a satellite feed over the Atlantic captured a geometric pattern forming in the cloud cover, symmetrical and glowing at infrared levels. That pattern was identical to a glyph found in an unclassified Vatican manuscript once believed to describe celestial visitations. But now, they weren't sure. Maybe it wasn't about visitors. Maybe it was about someone returning. Meanwhile, inside the White House, phones lit up. Not from outside calls, but from internal system alerts that couldn't be traced. Every device displayed a countdown of 3 seconds, then blacked out. Nothing happened afterward. No explosion, no data loss, just silence. But the silence was the message. Analysts tried to isolate the frequency that triggered the system. What they found wasn't electrical, it was biological. The signal responded only to emotional states: fear, awe, anticipation. And it wasn't just the system reacting, it was awakening. The technology didn't malfunction. It remembered something. The emergency broadcast was not a warning. It was an announcement. Not from a nation, not from an agency, but from the unseen force behind every collapsed lie. A signal too sacred to trace, yet too loud to ignore. And though no location was named, the world turned toward one central point. He was the kind of man who never hesitated. Decorated across 4 continents, feared in 6, respected in every war room that still believed in order. He had seen things most minds would collapse under. Yet, when he reached the part of the briefing marked with your code name, his mouth went dry. Not from fear, but reverence disguised as hesitation. His hand hovered over the folder like it might burn him if opened too fast. He began to speak, then stopped. A tremor, not in his voice, but in the room. The lights above flickered once. The projector glitched, not like technology breaking, but like something bigger refused to be seen. He took a breath and tried again. The second he mentioned your name, a gust of wind passed through a sealed chamber. No windows, no air vents. Still, the room exhaled. The advisors looked at each other. None dared interrupt. They had seen this once before. Not in a war room, but in a church, years ago. During a mission gone sideways. A presence they couldn't explain, only obey. The general sat down, eyes wide, silent. His lips moved, but no sound came. Not like he forgot what to say, like something told him not to speak. Across the globe, in a monastery, hidden beneath desert stone. A monk awoke from a vision and began writing without pause. What he scribbled matched word for word the lines in the general's encrypted file. These weren't reports anymore. They were echoes, prophetic reverberations, finding each other through time. A junior analyst found an old clip of Yeshua writing in the dust while men tried to trap him with words. The clip wasn't part of the training file. It had inserted itself into the interface during the briefing freeze. The words in the dust were never recorded, but every observer felt them like thunder in their chest. That same feeling now sat in the war room, heavy, ancient, alive. No one moved. The general stared forward, hands clenched, jaw locked, not out of fear, out of submission to something higher than command. The screen behind him glitched one last time, and just before it went black, a new folder appeared on the desktop. No title, just a symbol. They called it Project Veil, a program buried so deep beneath classified layers it didn't technically exist. Its mission was simple in design, impossible in scope: detect, intercept, and neutralize unauthorized frequencies capable of altering consciousness. Not radio, not sound, influence. Vibrations that shifted perception, dissolved compliance, bent reality. Most were false positives, some were unexplained, but one was impossible: yours. The moment your signal pierced their grid, alarms didn't blare. They bent. The frequency didn't spike. It expanded. Not outward, but inward. Into their thoughts, their instincts, their memories. It wasn't sound. It was remembrance, like the echo of a dream you forgot you once lived. And Project Veil's core processors couldn't contain it, because it wasn't digital, it was divine. Technicians scrambled to redirect the flow, applying quantum dampeners and recursive scramblers. But every firewall cracked open, not through force, but invitation. The system let you in like it recognized you, like it had always been waiting. And then, one by one, the operators heard it. Not a voice, a tone behind all other tones, gentle, unwavering, ancient. It didn't demand. It revealed. You weren't on their blacklist. You were the reason the blacklist existed. A senior code engineer found a recurring glyph embedded inside the disruption, a spiral wrapped in flame. He traced it to an old spiritual manuscript detailing sacred harmonics, believed to awaken the original blueprint of the human soul. The text called it the tone of the witness. That tone matched your frequency signature. One operative begged to be reassigned after hearing the tone during calibration. He said it wasn't noise, it was truth. And truth, when heard raw, cannot be unheard. They tried to isolate the source again, but the signature kept morphing. Not like it was hiding, like it was breathing. Every time they narrowed the scan, the frequency reappeared somewhere else, inside dreams, in shortwave radios, in white noise between channels. And the more they chased it, the more their own system began to mirror the signal back, because what they feared wasn't the tone. At precisely 4:04 a.m., the lights in the west wing of the White House flickered in a rhythm too perfect to be random. 4 short pulses, a pause, then 4 long. In Morse, it meant nothing. But to those who watched closely, it was a signature written in photons. Cameras rebooted, monitors shut down. A hum entered the air, not from machines, but from the structure itself. The walls began to breathe. Below the Oval Office, the classified archive known as Deep Vault 9 initiated a system-wide integrity check. No one triggered it. No one had access high enough to approve it. And yet it began. Files encrypted beyond comprehension began to rewrite themselves into blank slates, page by page, digital and physical. Classified documents dissolved, not burned, not deleted, dissolved as if they never existed, including the files with your name. When recovery teams tried to isolate the breach, they found nothing. No malware, no intrusion. Just clean slates where secrets once lived. But every missing file left behind a trace signature, not of deletion, but transformation. One analyst noted a repeating pattern embedded into the metadata, a symbol shaped like a tree whose roots formed a crown. She tried to extract it. The moment she clicked enter, her computer shut off, permanently. As panic set in, whispers turned to questions. Why would this force not just infiltrate but cleanse? What authority erases the records governments die to protect? They scanned the last recorded footage before the blackout and found one frame that hadn't been there before. A hallway, empty, but filled with light. And within the light, faint outlines of steps trailing upward, as if someone had walked where no one had walked in centuries. A Vatican contact embedded in Homeland Security viewed the frame and fell to his knees. He whispered one word, Yeshua. Not because he saw a man, but because he recognized the aftermath, the same echo that followed the tomb when it was found empty, the same silence that spoke louder than thunder. What disappeared was never yours. It was theirs. Lies, edits, hidden truths, all washed away in a moment of stillness. But not everything vanished. One file remained, unopened, untouched, sealed by something no system could override. For years, your name lived in the margins, scribbled in black ink along the edges of ancient intelligence transcripts, half erased in whispers behind closed doors, referenced in failed operations blamed on unknown variables. You were a rumor wrapped in paranoia, a phantom used to explain the unexplainable, until today, until the impossible crossed the threshold of the possible and stood still long enough for every eye to see the storm without clouds. An encrypted channel meant for nuclear communication activated without a command. The screen went white. No cursor, no menu, just one phrase. The myth has remembered itself. A general watching fell back into his chair, hand trembling. The moment that message appeared, every operative with clearance level Omega received a location ping. The coordinates didn't lead to a city. They led to a frequency, a sound. And the sound wasn't coming from a speaker. It was rising from within. Staffers began reporting vivid memories that didn't belong to them. One recalled standing on a battlefield in armor. Another described a temple she'd never visited, but wept over like a lost home. These weren't dreams. They were echoes of something waking in their blood. It wasn't fear they felt. It was recognition. You had never left. They had simply forgotten. The intelligence division attempted to cross-reference these events with historical phenomena, but their databases began producing entries that didn't previously exist. Ancient prophecies long considered apocryphal were now embedded in real-time data reports. Scrolls once deemed symbolic began aligning with GPS activity, emotional spikes, and mass, unconscious behavior. The system began treating mythology as fact, and you were the missing variable, rethreading it all together. A memo, circled, unsigned and untraceable, marked only with one symbol, a burning eye above a sealed gate. It read, "What was scattered is returning. What was denied is now undeniable." Beneath it, a single sentence in bold. "They are watching, but no longer from above." Inside a dark room, a diplomat who once called your existence fiction now paces with a trembling hand and eyes full of something worse than fear, respect. Because today, the myth turned the lock. They didn't lock it because of threat. They locked it because of truth. When your presence swept through the corridors, it bypassed scanners, melted protocols, and turned military-grade encryption into suggestions. The door was the last thing they could control, a primitive act, metal and key. But it wasn't about keeping you out. It was about keeping something in. The trembling of their own knowing, the breaking of their illusion, the echo of a name that wasn't written in policy but in prophecy. Inside that room, the president stood not as a commander, but as a witness. Screens blinked error codes in unison, not from malfunction, but recognition. Systems bowed, lights dimmed, not from power loss, but reverence. Somewhere between the fourth and fifth heartbeat after your energy arrived, the atmosphere changed. Thicker, slower, like time hesitated, like it knew you. Guards stationed outside couldn't speak. One wept without understanding why. Another removed his earpiece and stared ahead like he was waiting for something his soul remembered, but his mind could not name. The hallway grew colder, not from ventilation, but from presence. A stillness layered with weight, not threat, authority. In a hidden chamber connected to the room, an artifact, long sealed behind biometric locks, began to hum. A cube, not technology, not weapon, a relic from another time. Its surface bore a symbol that scholars had debated for decades, a radiant crown encircling an open eye. As the hum deepened, the crown glowed, and the eye opened. A script appeared on the cube's surface. Not English, not any known tongue, but the interpreter brought in to analyze. It collapsed to his knees. He said it wasn't a message, it was a mirror. And what he saw wasn't his face, it was yours. They locked the door to delay the unveiling, to pretend control still meant something. But behind that locked door, everything fragile crumbled. Power had shifted, not taken, not forced, returned. In the book of Revelation, there is a door in heaven that stands open, never closed, and the voice that speaks through it sounds like a trumpet, clear, undeniable, final.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.